Got it. Good morning. My name is Mette. I'm from eTech 551, and today I am interviewing Kasper Johansen, who is the Global Chief Information Officer of Shipco Transport. Shipco Transport is a global transportation or global logistics company where Kasper and I have actually worked for the past more than 25 years. Shipco Transport, we provide ocean transport, air freight, domestic, warehousing services to the transportation intermediaries. And we refer to in the industry as what is called an NVOCC, non-vessel operating common carrier, or again, a transportation intermediary or integrator. So the company has more than 76 offices around the world and more than 2,000 employees. And Kasper is in charge of globally as our CTO of our technology transformation and integration, and has an entire team behind him, which is why I thought it would be fantastic to have Kasper with us today to talk a little bit about what he sees happening as trends in the future and what he sees happening right now. Because we see also, as well as we as an industry are migrating towards more of a hybrid working environment. We already have extensive compliance training in place already, but I wanted to discuss with Kasper how he sees the future of online teaching and learning as the CTO for a global organization that needs to consider both the current needs, but also the requirements of Generation X, Z, and next generation Alpha as a future employer. So Kasper, thank you for being here today with us, the eTech 551 Masters team. Now that we have migrated into a more online environment in the post-COVID era, how do we help balance this whole technology impact for employees who now get most or more of their information via online resources?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This is really exciting. So it's a good question. I don't think there's one specific answer to that specific question. For me, with being in IT, for us, it was always very much a remote setup. So I think for me, at least, it came very natural. We were always used to working remote. And I think for us, looking at everybody else, we were just like, well, we've done this for like ages. That's just how it works. I think that part of it became a little bit tricky. What we've always done, and what I think we're getting better at, is ensuring that we still have a happy hour, even though that might be remote, or even though that might be using your webcam. But I think the webcam is going to be crucial to how we move forward, instead of too many things. Like we've always said, man, grab the phone. That was the old school way of doing it. I think now really you're grabbing your webcam and you're having a meeting with somebody, and it can still be very intimate. And I think that intimacy and actually getting to see somebody like you and I are right now, I think that will carry us into the future. And I think that will also give us a much more of a personal touch to things than just having a chat function somewhere.
Fantastic. But do you think, have we done ourselves a disfavor wanting to move so much of the training to an online setting? I think we as an industry historically were very much sitting in a seat, right, pointing to a computer or doing online training. So do you think by doing this whole thing online now, are we losing, if you will, the personal touch of training in person?
It's a funny question, because when we were doing more of a face-to-face training and we had your training sessions, I've actually sat through years and I loved them. It was one of the things that excited me. But I think it was also a different time. I think maybe we had a little bit more time. We didn't have as many emails. We didn't have Skype. We didn't have Teams. We didn't have Zoom like we're on now, where people can get a hold of us almost 24/7. So I think it really came out of necessity. And I think the push that we got in connection with getting to be more of in a hybrid environment has been crucial. Not only that, how many times didn't we say, oh, it'd be awesome if we had like an online platform we could go to and actually get these training sessions, because Meta just did this fantastic thing, we should have recorded it so other people could actually get to see it. I think now you can get a much bigger reach with the training material you have. And I think you can actually put more effort into it, instead of thinking, okay, well, now I have to travel to the next 16 offices. You actually get a chance to provide better material than we had before.
I think you're making a good point, Kasper, and that kind of leads into my next question, because I was going to ask you, how do we ensure that we maintain an acceptable standard, right, of quality, and certainly taping it, right, or scripting it in such a way that you don't forget anything is one of it. But how do we, as we do this online training, how do we keep our employees balanced? Because now we have so much, as you said, we have too many emails, we have so much technology available to us, right? And we have all this technology at work. People are inundated with their, their phones, and now everybody's we all carrying our online computer, right? Because we have our phones with us, smartphones with us. So how do we make sure that we balance this? We have it at home, we have it at work, we have constant access. How do we avoid getting tech overload or tech stress, for lack of a better word?
I, I I don't think there is a such thing, but that doesn't necessarily entail just our work environment. I think we're being
Yeah.
bombarded with tech from all angles. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think a lot of discipline has to go along with it. I, for one, try to have a hard stop at 5 p.m., at least for a few minutes, and say, okay, well, now I have to just stop for a second and do something else. If that's just driving home from work, or if I'm working from home, do the laundry or take the dog out, or do something like that. I think it is extremely important that you're very disciplined about doing something that's non-tech. For my team specifically, I kind of demand from them that they take a walk for at least half an hour every day in and around lunch. So have your lunch and then get away, like go for a walk. And I don't care if it's shitty out, if the weather is bad out, then go for a walk inside the house. I mean, do something, but get away, and no phones, no nothing. And I think discipline in those areas will be crucial moving forward. If not, you're absolutely right. Maybe we will just turn into robots, and that's not. There's no longevity in that, not for us.
No, I think you're right. I want to share with you a very interesting professor that has written some really great books. His name is Dr. Larry Rosen. He wrote a book called The Distracted Mind and Eye Disorder, and has written for Psychology Today. He was talking about that in his classes when he was doing instruction, that they would have, he would do what he calls tech breaks, because people would get visibly distraught and stressed by not having their technology and their phones close by. So he would literally, keep them going for half an hour, do instruction or information half an hour, and he would ask them to put their phones upside down, and then they would take a tech break for 2 minutes where people could check their information. Now, I know we're pretty hard at work in terms of, we obviously don't want people to sit and scroll through their feeds or have their phones next to them, but it sort of in a work environment, is that what we need? I love the fact you say go in nature, do something else. Do we need to do tech breaks?
I think people naturally do it.
Okay.
If you're in a classroom session, it's obvious a little bit different. But I think, I mean, when people go get coffee or water or what have you, I think that naturally gives you that break where I don't think anybody's not bringing their phone unless they're specifically looking to get away. And then you have people for the guys that are in the office. But if not, in your home, you certainly have both options, even if that means just turning on the TV. Not that's not tech, but still trying to do something else to create something that a specific tech break. I think it makes sense. If you're in meetings, long meetings, we do it. We absolutely do it. We have at least a 2-hour break in the middle of the day, because our jobs just demand that we're on. We can't just disappear for a
Yeah.
full week. So yeah, absolutely, I would agree with that.
You're bringing up another good point, Kasper, because I think we're known for long marathon meetings, right? And you have some people that have meetings where they might just stand up so that people don't encourage to other than kind of keep to the point. But when you have these long meetings, also maybe historically looking back, it's been typical people have brought their computers and have been sitting doing emails while they were listening or doing other
Mm.
things. What's sort of the right balance for those kind of meetings for, again, the online, as we're learning from each other, online learning or teaching? I mean, is that the right way to host a meeting with everybody sitting doing their own thing? or does that
I for
distract us?
sure would not encourage. I mean, it's one of the things that I'm a strong opposer of doing emails and doing other things when you're in the middle of the meeting. I just think it's disrespectful for the rest of the group there.
Yeah.
But having designated breaks and just be, vigilant about it and say, okay, this is when you get to do your emails. I'm sure you can wait 10 minutes unless something is a big mess. And of course, it's perfectly fine. But we're usually very vigilant about saying there will be no emails as we're going through these things. And we know it's a long haul, but I mean, I would hope that people also prepare themselves if they know they're going into a meeting like that. I don't think, fortunately, the majority of us do have these meetings any longer, or that regular staff would not necessarily go into a session like that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Now, Kasper, what's your personal sort of favorite online platform for teaching or learning, or do you have any sort of, you get exposed to so much technology, and I have to say Kasper spearheads so many great initiatives in our company, so he sees more than most of us do. I mean, is any sort of for a master's class in educational technology sort of a dazzling platform that you have found really interesting that you want to explore?
Um, it's a funny question, or actually maybe my answer is a little bit funny. I love really bad news websites or platforms like TMZ, for example, but it's because I find it incredibly fascinating how they kind of entice you into viewing other material than what you're looking for. And I know we're kind of getting into clickbait and stuff like that, and that's not really what I'm after. But for me, it's insanely fascinating of how you can lead somebody's mind into somewhere completely different. And of course, for me, it goes into the whole shipping scenario, right? We have a customer who's looking for an ocean freight rate going to Hamburg, and then we say, well, we have a special going to France, or did you know we have air freight? So seeing those similarities, and it's really funny, but also speaking about the new generation. I mean, sometimes I don't understand how to read these websites. Like I really have to like put my mind to it, right? And then you're thinking it's like, this new generation, they're just like plowing through this stuff, and I find it hard. So for me, it's not so much about a platform; it's where to get the information. And then of course, and I don't think that's ever going to change, even though we're very much into the tech. I mean, our peers, right? Our mentors. These are all real people, and when you get down to emails, which is kind of sort of tech. I mean, I love emails and reading them, and kind of maybe even putting too much effort into reading, especially the emails from like our CEO or something like that, and see how he writes and why he does it, and try to understand things like that. So for me, it's very much about staying away from one specific platform. It's a lot of different information that's being funneled.
And I also, when we talk about emails and we talk about, because you're right, you can easily go down also a rabbit hole of information, right? As you're talking TMC and some of these places that where you start with one information set and they take you somewhere else and take you somewhere else and take you somewhere else. And we'd love to do that with our customers to figure out how do we get to take them where we want them to go, which of course is very sort of targeted marketing, or if not marketing, at least sort of directing them in the right places. But if we look at our employees again, looking at the new generations coming up that we are teaching, Kasper, how do we compete with this very blingy world of great graphics and sounds and entertainment as we are now we're going into? Of course, we are trying to approach it from a training aspect, but how do we keep them interested, or should we even do that? Is that our role?
I honestly, and this could be very naive of me. I think they actually welcome a break of looking at normal people and not seeing flashy colors. That has been my experience anyway, and not just for myself, but I do think they welcome like a conversation like you and I are having right now, just being pulled out, and you can tell a lot of them they haven't had a lot of these one-on-one conversation, and they get a little bit shy. But I think a lot of them actually they thrive in those situations, and it's like, holy moly, this was like something brand new, and there wasn't crazy colors and sounds, and nothing exploded.
Nothing exploded is usually a very good thing. No, I agree with you. Because that does happen in our world.
It does.
I would say that both in the educational setting, both in the classroom, and I think also when we look at our employees, if the instructors are talking to the kids or the students who could be of all ages, and also when we talk to our employees, we're finding the current generations sometimes are a little bit skeptical about talking to people. They have more sort of, they'd like to text. Email is coming down. Facebook, that's for the old generation, right? By now, and we talk instant snap and we talk texting. How do we deal with this current generation of employees that don't want to pick up a phone, but they want to do all their communicating via text and email?
I think as we are, and as I think we've done a great job of, we cater to anybody and everybody. It's the only right way to do it. And I mean, thank goodness for that. We do have platforms, we do have emails, we do have Teams, and we have options to do all these things. And I think there's a place for everybody to do that. The further we get into having our website be more of a communications platform between our end users, but also our own staff, I mean, that opens up for a new session, right? So now you can actually, without looking at somebody's face, interact with a customer. You don't necessarily have to talk. And I think that's perfectly fine. That there are introverts even within our generation, man. So I mean, we had to kind of get around that one anyway. And I think that's perfectly fine. So I think as long as you have an open mind and say, well, there has to be a place for everybody, and there has to be a room for everybody. And I think that the tech for sure caters to that. You can do what we're doing now, looking at each other, which I love, obviously. Or you can hide behind a screen, which is also fine. And I think that's the beauty of the hybrid that we have, that you don't necessarily have to stay in the office and talk to people. If you don't like it, that's probably okay, and we have room for you too.
I think you're right, Casper. I think, if anything good came of a very terrible situation with COVID, right, was that we kind of
Mm,
really very quickly and unusually so shifted into sort of a hybrid setting, right, where we were able to involve stakeholders around the world and communicate with both customers and global colleagues, if you will, in a variety of setting. And I think it sort of maybe has become the way we meet these days has become a little bit more sort of a Facebook meets business, right?
yeah.
Where it's been nice to do it that way. So I have to say I agree with you. But I want to ask you, sort of in closing, if there are any sort of words from the wise, or what do we need to do and consider to be sort of, again, as we move forward in this kind of COVID, post-COVID era, how do we remain a best-in-class online educator and employer for, how do we employ the best online teaching and learning methods? What should we consider, Casper, as we move forward?
I think, as I mentioned before, we have to be very open-minded about how we approach this. I love the fact that we have, or now have, a whole training portal, that we have, all of our HR handbook, what have you. We have all these things online, where in the past it was impossible to find these things. Having said that, even on the IT training, we've gone straight the opposite direction. And we have one of our guys right now actually doing face-to-face training on social engineering. And we're putting everything back into a more personal type setup, so they can actually see what to look out for in terms of, your own private lives and your own passwords and how things should work.
Yeah,
For sure, there will be a video recording of that. But right now, we're trying everything. There's a place for all of it. A lot of it does make perfect sense to have online, and you have a couple of clicks, and it's way efficient. But other things you just need to have a conversation about. But that doesn't mean it couldn't be an online classroom. I mean, look at all the online colleges and universities. I mean, they were there way before COVID, and people like that. And again, it's just
yeah,
being able to cater to everything and anything.
yeah.
And I think that's just what we have to pay attention to and keep paying attention to. And I actually think we've done a fantastic job.
I think you're right, Casper. And I think if we can find a way in the future to give our employees like micro credentials that maybe even in a future world would be able to help them complete degrees or complete certifications or do personal development programs, or something that helps them not only become better at what they do, which is always gratifying in and of itself, but also something that helps us grow as people cross-functionally and cross-culturally and across the
I
globe. I
agree.
think that it's a lot of fun to take the journey with you. And I want to
Appreciate
thank
that.
Kasper Johansen, who is our
Thank you.
global CTO, who does a tremendous job for Shipco Transport as a global company. But thank you for giving us your perspective today on what you think we
Very
need
welcome.
to be mindful of. Thank you. Take care.